7 years old, I went to the pictures for the first time with my grandpa and my wee brother, and it was the Odeon in the air, and my grandpa paid to fall asleep and snore really loudly during Star Wars. It was the first Star Wars. It was George Lucas's 70th birthday on the weekend, the director and maker of Star Wars, and there's a great wee quote from him that I found on the weekend. He says, "You can't do it until you can imagine it." And of course he spent his life imagining amazing things and making them into movies. And my son is now the age I was when I went to see that film at the pictures, and I live in a house that's full of stories. I tell my kids stories, we watch films, we make our own stories up, and I choose the stories that we watch and we tell very carefully, because I'm a storyteller myself. That's how I make a living. I write songs and I sing old songs, and if I do my job well, then what happens when I go out telling these stories and singing these stories is that other people come up and they tell me their stories and how the stories I've told connect with them. So I believe in stories. I don't think they're just entertainment, and I don't think they're just descriptors of how the world are. I think the stories that we tell about ourselves are generative. You tell a story and you can make a thing happen because it says something about the kind of person you think you are, and the kind of people you think you live around, and the kind of place you think you can live in. And the thing that's excited me the most about all the energy around the referendum campaign, and the Yes campaign in particular, has been it's opened up this whole world of imagining how things might be, and asking the question, do things have to be exactly as they are? And over the past 18 months or so, I've been very lucky to go around the country and into different communities, not just as part of the Yes campaign, but been amazed by the number of small communities, much the same size as Carhead, where I live, where people have got together and they've organised their own events in their community halls and their church halls to talk about these things. People who would maybe not otherwise actually sit in the same room as each other, asking questions about what it is that matters to them, what their values are, and what they think their role is, and the role of their neighbours, and who do they trust, and how responsible do they feel for their own lives. And I think that's an amazingly powerful thing, and it's like something that won't get put back in the bottle no matter what happens with the referendum this year. And I hope that this is not something that ends in September. I hope this is the start of something that's more about properly engaging with taking control and feeling responsible for how our lives are governed. Because the thing that frustrates me the most, and I think probably the thing that is the galvanising force between me being a Yes voter, is that I'm tired of living in a country where I'm constantly blaming other people for how things are. Blaming London and blaming people in the South East and blaming the uneducated, this and that, and blaming them, it's all them. It's just, and I'm really tired of living in a place where I'm constantly advocating responsibility for how my life is. And I would like to live in a place, in a country, where I felt like my voice counted and my vote counted, and not just mine, but my neighbours and my family and all the people that I live around. Because I think that sense of not having responsibility and hopelessness has been endemic in Scotland. And it translates in some pretty horrific, concrete ways. We have one of the worst health records in Western Europe, and the afflictions that, the particularly Scottish afflictions are to do with mental health and alcoholism, and there are conditions associated with despair and a sense of not having control over your own life. And I don't think that's tolerable in the 21st century to live in a country where a massive swathe of the population don't feel like they have control over their lives. And I think this independence referendum offers us a chance to take responsibility for how things are. And that means, though, and this is quite terrifying, be responsible for the possibility of things going wrong as well as things going right. Because right now when things go wrong, we can just blame that on somebody else, and it's not our fault. And the reality is, if we had an independent parliament here in Scotland, we would run out of other people to blame. And so I think that's a massive issue, the whole idea of what your own sense of agency in the world is at the heart of this for me, and my desire to have a Yes vote. As a matter of fact, I'm also a member of the Green Party. I'm not here in any party desire to vote yes is not based upon any sense of certainty about the future. Because I believe uncertainty is the certain thing. We live with uncertainty, and how we choose to govern ourselves is about how we navigate that uncertainty in the kind of most graceful and fair and honest way possible. But we can't rid ourselves or our world of that uncertainty. I would just like to navigate all of that in a way that actually accorded more trust to the people that I live around. A wee personal example, last year I lived in a rented house in Cardiff, and last year I spent a year in a bit of an in-between house. It was a crap house, to be honest. I was miserable, everything was broken. It was the only thing that was available to me at the time. It was the first time since I was a student that I'd lived in a house that had a key card meter. And it absolutely drove me nuts, because I did all that, I checked on the internet about it. I was on the most expensive electricity tariff possible. I had no control. I wasn't able to switch away from the meter. I wasn't able to choose my provider. I didn't have any control over this one basic thing, which was how I heated and lighted my home. And it drove me, and it just absolute apoplexy from the 10 months that I was in that house. Now I was fortunate, I make a wage that allows me to pay my electricity bills. Loads of people don't. But that sense of just that one basic thing in my life that I had no control over how that happened, I was just stuck with that. It was a telling reminder to me of if every aspect of your life is like that, and you're constantly treated like a child, effectively, not given the ability to make decisions about your basic physical, domestic environment, ramp that up onto a national scale. And I think that's a lot of what we've had historically, and a lot of what has been eroded by the discussion around the independence campaign. Because I think imagination and creativity are amazingly powerful. And I think the Better Together campaign are terrified by what might be born out of this desire to imagine alternatives to how things are. If I could tell you one tiny wee story, that would be okay. Very, very quick little story. I'm a folk singer, so I know lots of old stories. And there's a wee story, because I do think stories say things about what we think is real. So there was a story, it's called The King of Birds. And how it is way back in the midst of time, all the birds of the world are at war with one another, total chaos. And a little group of them get together and they say, we've had enough of this, it's time to find a new king, but how are we going to do it? Well, we'll have a flying competition. Whoever can fly highest in the sky will be named the King of Birds. So they advertise it all over, and the birds of the world gather. And a gong sound and they take off into the air, at least most of them do, because the penguins obviously are a wee bit miffed by the whole rules of the engagement. And the first few birds to fall, quite a lot of them are from round about half head, so they're quite stout. The partridges and the pheasants don't last very long. And the songbirds give it a good crack, so there's blackbirds and robins and skylarks do their beautiful little trilling thing, and they fall to earth. And then the big-feeted geese that come up all through the borders, they've been going a long way. They've come from Musselburgh and they're hard, and even they fall. And in the end, right at the end of it all, looking down is the eagle, and you can't see any other birds below him. And he says, well, I'm the King of Birds. And just as he does that, in his wing feathers there's a fluttering. And the wind's not strong enough to take him any higher, he's right at the top. 6 inches above the eagle pops the wren, and the wren stood a wee lift in the eagle's feathers. And because he's small and nimble, he can catch the current of the air and is above the eagle. So all across Europe and right into the Arabic cultures, the King of Birds in old mythology is not the eagle, the big, powerful, strong, obviously dominating bird, it's the wren. And I love that story because I love the whole idea that what is powerful in the world and what's required to adapt and make a go of it is not necessarily scale or physical strength or might or the ability to dominate other creatures. It can be nimbleness, and I think Scotland is a nimble place. It can only get nimbler because to me the bringing power to Scotland is just the start. I'd like them to see it's dispersed right out across the country into ever smaller bits. And the nimbler we are, the more connected we are to the people we live with and whose decisions impact on ours, then I think the better things will be. And that's my reason.